Dave Rutherford is on the air, and the gloves are coming off. It's time for Alberta to square off on today's issues. This is Rutherford on QR77.
I'm Dave Rutherford. Welcome to this hour. With me, Walid Phares, Middle East expert, author, advisor to the U.S. House of Representatives Caucus on Counter-Terrorism, professor of global strategies, National Defense University in D.C., Fox News terrorism and Middle East expert. Walid Phares, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, and hope you'll feel much better.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I am already. Hey, Walid, I'm seeing debate about procedure a little bit here at the United Nations and different ways that states can be declared, if you will. But, you know, the declaring theory or the theory of, in fact, building statehood with your neighbors. What is the significance of Abbas's application at this point, and will it actually lead, do you think, to statehood quickly?
Well, not overnight. You've explained it clearly that this is a procedure, actually a process, a legal process. But at the basis of that process, what should come as a precondition is the agreement among all people, meaning among all those who are engaged in the process, those going to recognize the borders, meaning when Algeria was independent from France, both France and the newly independent Algerian government had an agreement, in the Evian agreement, in France, and then went to the United Nations. Everything went smoothly. But in this case, the breaking away republic, call it, the Palestinian territories, are going to the United Nations, bypassing phase one, which is to settle with Israel the map. What Mr. Abbas has done is to take a map of his own, a unilateral map, took it to the United Nations, knowing that at the UN, at least at the first level, because you need two levels, but the first level, that is the General Assembly, he got a majority. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
But the first level won't give him full statehood. It's the second level, the Security Council. So he decided, okay, I'm going to go get my first level, and then we'll see what happens later.
Well, and we know what's going to happen at the Security Council. The United States is going to veto any sort of statehood, so it's pretty much a fait accompli, isn't it? It's not going to get through the Security Council.
And he knew that. I mean, there is no surprise for anybody in this game, not for Israel, not for the Palestinian Authority, not for the United States. This is something that has been in the works for the last year and a half and maybe more. It's just that Abbas decided to snap this one segment that he will get for a variety of reasons. He thinks that by doing so, he will get the support of many Arabs, especially that the Arab Spring is changing governments mostly in Egypt, in Libya, in Tunisia. And these governments, we know it, are going to be more sympathetic to Hamas eventually, with the Muslim Brotherhood. So he's just racing with Hamas. I mean, people think that he's doing it just as a suicide movement. No, he's trying to tell Hamas, I'm the one who got the statehood, even half a statehood.
Okay, so is he then, he's appealing to the Palestinian people to, in essence, reject Hamas?
He's trying to outmaneuver Hamas by telling all Palestinians, look, I got you the half statehood. We expected the veto to come. So now you're going to recognize me, and the foreign aid from Libya and from Saudi Arabia should come to me. Now, he's making a big mistake because Hamas from the onset said, we're not going to recognize you. And so he's now in bad relationship with the U.S. and still in bad relationship with the Islamist, coalition in the region. So he's, as you said, it's a trap. He's stuck in the middle.
But did he spring the trap himself? And I guess the question would be, why now?
He understands it's going to be very difficult. He thinks that because of the confrontation that is looming between the new jihadi bloc that is emerging from the Arab Spring and Israel, at some point the Israelis will say, you know what, we'd rather still talk to Abbas, but not to Hamas and those who are behind Hamas. He's having his own calculations, like a game, and he thinks that he risked, but he may get away with it.
Now, what about then, I mentioned some analysis of the Palestinian people, Walid, you may agree with this, that there is this now he's hoping for this great support, but there is also great expectation. What if nothing changes at this point? I mean, politically, what could happen to Fatah? What could happen to the more moderate side of the Palestinian people if, in fact, they're not satisfied?
Well, number one, all it boils down to is money. Having moved in that direction, he must have, and this is the big answer, he must have ensured that his guys will be paid by some salary somewhere. If he has done this, risking that the United States Congress and maybe the Europeans will stop the payment, that would be suicide.
Yeah.
I assume that he must have been promised by probably Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others, that if he go in that direction, they will ensure some funding. But by doing so, he will be completely at their mercy, not being able to make any progress with the Israelis. Again, imagine a huge gaming between all these parties. He thinks he's going to go through because, per his information, Hamas is readying itself for a confrontation with Israel, and he's going to play the third party. That's what he thinks is going to happen.
Well, and of course it plays out on the much broader sort of geopolitical area, doesn't it, Walid? With Syria and Iran actively supporting Hamas. Is sort of a fuse been lit here a little bit?
Oh, yes. The whole theory in the region, as you all know, is now heading towards confrontation because what was supposed to be an Arab Spring in its first stages, there were civil societies. We saw it in Egypt. We saw it in Tunisia, even the first few weeks of Libya. But now most of these battlefields, quote unquote, are being taken over by the more hardcore parts of that spring, and these are the Muslim Brotherhood inspired movements. And once they will get to power, say in Egypt in the next, let's say, month and a half, there are going to be elections, most likely, they are projected to win. And in Libya, although Gaddafi was a bad guy, those who are going to replace him, the most organized, are the Islamist militias. So look at all these developments in all directions, including Syria. Syria, in either direction, is going to be a problem because if Assad stays, he's going to reinforce the Iranian-Hezbollah axis.
Right.
If he is crumbled, by whom? It's going to be mostly by the Muslim Brotherhood.
My guest is Walid Phares. We're talking about the attempt by Palestinians to get statehood declared by the United Nations. It's not going to happen in the way they suspect, and they know that. That's the thing about this, and Walid made that case. Thank you for making the case. Everybody does know all of these dimensions, but it is a game. But, Walid, you made the point about which entities would emerge from the Arab Spring in these countries, most recently Libya, but the others that we've seen with popular uprisings, overturning dictators, but then who's coming in behind? You're concerned, obviously, that some of the elements that may end up running these countries are themselves extremist, if you will?
If you remember, for the last 6 months, up till last month, many Western leaders or commentators were saying, we don't know who these guys are. In fact, many experts knew from the first few months. The Arab Spring is not monolithic. It has two forces. In the early stages, civil society, the guys we saw on our TV screens, the laptop people, Facebook people in Egypt, the unions in Tunisia, and so on. But soon enough, about 2 months, 3 months, the Islamist networks that are all well-organized, funded, etc., took over. There was a race that was done in the Arab Spring. And my projection is that at least Libya and Cairo in Egypt is going to go to the Islamist side. Tunisia, the jury is still out because the secular forces are strong enough.
Mm-hmm. That does then question NATO. And, of course, Canada part of that, and Canada now talking about extending our mission in Libya for another 3 months, Walid. Are we then complicit in supporting some Islamist extremists who eventually would take these countries over?
Not directly, not politically, in the sense that our leaders, Western, North American, and European leaders, have been badly advised, not by their military. The militaries really did a great job, but by the Middle East experts that we're having. The analysts who said, well, Egypt is a real civil society uprising, and the Muslim Brotherhood are metamorphosing. No, the Muslim Brotherhood, as of July 29, said clearly they're going to establish an Islamic state whereby it's going to soon enough become like not the Taliban, but something very close to it. So goes for Libya, whereby we did not pay attention that the bureaucrats and the diplomats and the military of the early stages in Benghazi have been overwhelmed by the Islamist jihadi militia. The military commander of Tripoli, on behalf of the TNC, was an associate of Al-Qaeda. There should be a major review in Congress, in your parliament, in the European Parliament about what to do next, how to at least save these revolts from the radicals.
Have we not, though, recognized the TNC as the legitimate government in Libya? We've already done all that.
We did recognize the TNC. The TNC has 1/3 formally Islamist, 2/3 on the other side. What we need to do is basically identify the secular force. We have not done that, neither in the U.S., nor in Canada, nor in Western Europe or all of Europe. We have actually granted a full support to the entire Arab Spring without looking at our real associates. For example, the G20 is going to earmark $40 billion to the so-called Arab Spring. Nobody is discussing who's the Arab Spring, who are those leaders. It's going to end up in the hands of the more organized and radicals. We'll be funding them.
Well, that's disconcerting, Walid, that is, and thank you for the analysis on that. Because that sort of extension of our goodwill at this point to support a populist uprising of a dictator, that's all very romantic, and we like doing that, but if the consequences are, dangerous for the West? Would you say that? I mean, that's a whole nother kettle of fish.
This is not just dangerous, this is earth-shattering. What the Islamists can do in the region is create the caliphate in less than 3-4 years. I mean, this is something we're concerned about for the last 10 years in Afghanistan. We're going to see the mother of all Afghanistans in the region. And I'm dramatizing, but I'm not that far from reality. If indeed the Muslim Brotherhood or the Salafists would take over North Africa with all the oil dividends coming from Libya, we're going to see a different planet out there.
Yeah, and a bit of a scary one, as you said.
Yes, sir.
Okay, looking then at what happens now with Israel and Palestine. I mean, the negotiation process has been stop, start, stop, start. Palestinians have rejected at least 3 times. They've rejected firm boundary settlements. I mean, they've said no. What now? Will these negotiations continue, and should they?
It's not going anywhere. I mean, for an analyst to make that statement, it means there's something systemic to change. As a historian, I'd say the problem began in 1947. I mean, the United Nations voted on a Palestinian state.
Yep.
They didn't need to go. Resolution 181. And the Palestinian state that was granted in 1947 was twice the one that Mr. Abbas would like to have now. It had a super West Bank, a super Gaza. Jerusalem was not even the capital of Israel, and yet the Arab League at the time rejected it. Now, 3-4 wars later, plus Iran's regime later, now the geopolitical situation is that Hamas doesn't want to even recognize the two-state solution. I'm not worried about the PA. I'm worried about the real force on the ground, the one that actually has the capacity of sinking the peace process from the south. That will be Gaza, and that will be Hezbollah from the north. This is the real problem. Iran is the real problem for the peace process, not the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Sure. Okay. Just a couple of minutes with Walid and your questions. Bob, hello.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question with that last comment. My question was this: Didn't the United Nations grant Israel statehood unilaterally?
Yeah.
And isn't that a source of a lot of the problems? Is the fact that the Arab nations didn't recognize that action at that time, and it's still festering.
Yeah, I mean, the essence of the problem goes back to 1947. I mean, many countries, either after World War II or after the collapse of the Soviet Union, remodeled, reshaped, either broke in 2 and 3, like the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, or reunited like Germany and other places. In the Middle East, what is blocking the peace process is not the discussion of the details. People think it's about a settlement here or a camp there. Yeah. It's really the ideological decision not to accept the idea of the state of Israel. Should it be a mini-state or a larger state?
Bob, thank you. Bob, thanks for that. Get interference on your line. Okay, so it does fundamentally, I mean, the Arab world still wants to push Israel into the sea. I mean, is that in essence it?
The radical forces, yes. And those radical forces are now on escalation. See, that's what concerns me, meaning the MB in Egypt, the Nahda in Tunisia, Hezbollah in Lebanon. I mean, these are not forces for peace. These are not forces going to sit down and negotiate details about which neighborhood and what neighborhood. If it was about technicalities, it would have been solved a long time ago. It's about a deep ideological position of rejecting the idea of an Israel. Should it be 10 kilometers or 10,000 square kilometers? That is no difference.
So then, is there I mean, the future then is this continuing conflict, and are you looking at ultimately, the battle of all time, or are we going to just dance around this?
No. I mean, look, we have missed opportunities. For example, in 2009 in June, when 1.5 million Iranians took to the streets of Tehran, that would have been the equivalent of the end of the Cold War had we supported them. Instead, Washington at the time said, "Oh, we're not meddling."
Yeah.
What do you mean meddling? Yeah. This would have been the same situation as the fall of the wall. Reagan said, "Yeah, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." And we moved away. Had the Iranian regime changed, collapsed, and a new democracy emerged there, Hamas would have gone down, Hezbollah would have gone down, and the radicals would have gotten half of their strength down. So there are moments in history where we have to move forward, and make statements, and we failed, and we're going to pay the price, all of us.
Walid, thank you for your analysis. As usual, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.